fairly loud. Oh, here we go. Here we go. So this is going to be fun tonight. Welcome, and I think more than Joanne Canello from CBC. Pleasure for me to be here, and I thank Bel-Air Community Association and another 9 community associations from Ottawa West-Nepean for having this great debate. The candidates have page numbers on the order which they are going to provide their opening statements, and we are going to start with Pat Friel of the Green Party. 2 minutes.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming out tonight. My family has lived in Ottawa for 5 generations. I myself am a Catholic graduate of the school board here, and I'm currently completing my diploma in horticulture industries at Algonquin College, and then right now completing my co-op work term. I've achieved a 5-year career working with McDonald's. In the last 3 of those years, I've been working as a manager and overseeing the restaurant's Joint Health and Safety Committee. Additionally, in the last 5 years, I've been volunteering with the Green Party. I started out as a canvasser for the Alex Hill campaign, and right now I'm holding the positions of federal treasurer and provincial president of my local riding associations. I chose the Green Party because the Green Party has the best plan for the environment, coupled with strong fiscal policies and a desire to truly help people. I hope to represent Ottawa's West-Nepean in the sense that a vote for me is a vote for a clean slate, and I really believe I am a hardworking and concerned youth who wants to be a voice for youth. Thank you.
All right, it's Bob Shirelli from the Liberal Party's next.
Thank you, Joanne, and thank you, Community Association sponsors. I want to tell you what we've done since we took office. On healthcare, we have among the shortest wait times in Canada. This is a verified fact. And the following is just some of what we built. A new Royal Ottawa Hospital bringing mental health services into the 21st century. A new cancer treatment centre in our community at the Queensway Carleton Hospital to bring challenging treatments closer to home. Our world-renowned Heart Institute with a major addition with new technology and operating rooms, and major additions to every hospital in Ottawa. And we recently committed funding to a new children's treatment centre at CHEO for children with complex disabilities, and to build a new civic hospital campus. Our government has and continues to build 21st century healthcare that matters for Ottawa and Ontario. And I have worked hard to serve you, my constituents. For example, funding for Tamir Foundation to support housing 60 adults with developmental disabilities. Facilitating funding for the Carleton Health Hub to build 42 affordable senior housing units connected to the health centre. Facilitating funding for Nelson House, a 20-bed shelter for women and children at risk in our riding. Funding Queensway Carleton Mental Health Facility expansion, and also its new acute care for the elderly ward. And having initiated LRT as mayor, I have championed it at Queen's Park and just announced expedited funding for it in the south, removing unacceptable congestion sooner on roads such as Merivale and Woodruff. I have the energy and commitment to continue serving you, and I ask for your support.
Well, now we've started, we have to clap for everyone, but as we go forward, after the opening statement, let's try to hold our applause so we can get through as many of your questions as possible. But next, though, we have Chandra Pasma of the NDP.
Thank you so much, Joanne. Thank you for hosting tonight's debate. Thank you to the Bel-Air Community Association and other community associations for hosting us. And thank you to all of you for coming out on such a beautiful spring evening to participate in this democracy in action. I've been knocking on doors across Ottawa West-Nepean the past few months, and everywhere I go I keep hearing the same things. People are really tired of the cynical, broken promises of the Liberals, and they're tired of the scandals and mismanagement. But they're also scared that Doug Ford's cuts are only going to make things worse. And they're also concerned about the stories that are coming out about electoral fraud in nomination races. Thankfully, this election, we don't have to choose between bad and worse. And I've been excited to bring the NDP's message of positive change to Ottawa West-Nepean. We have a plan to invest in healthcare, to make sure that people aren't being treated on stretchers in hospitals anymore, and that the Queensway Carleton doesn't have to tell people they shouldn't come to the hospital when they're sick because they can't fit you in. We have a plan to invest in new forms of health care, to make sure that everyone gets the prescription drugs and dental care they need, to make sure that people get mental health care when they need it. We want to fix seniors' care so that you don't have to be afraid to send your loved one to a long-term care home, that you know they're going to get great care while they're there. We want to create affordable child care so that parents know that their children are well cared for while they're at work, but it doesn't have to break the bank. We're going to repair our crumbling schools and invest in education so our kids in Ottawa West-Nepean have a bright future. And we're going to make post-secondary education more affordable so that it doesn't have to be a debt sentence for the rest of your life. Because after 15 years of government neglecting the things that matter most to people, you deserve a government that fights hard for you each and every single day. And that's what you will get with Andrea Horvath and the NDP. Thank you.
We have Nick Paliga of the Libertarian Party.
Thank you, and thank you everybody that came here tonight. For those of you that don't know, the Libertarian Party is it's a new party to the platform, and what we're bringing to the table are new ideas in that through freedoms, less government, and introducing more free market solutions to the issues. It'll open up stronger solutions. So for those of you that don't know about libertarianism, those are the main aspects, and that's what we're bringing.
And last but not least, Jeremy Roberts of the Progressive Conservatives.
Okay, thank you so much, Joanne. My name is Jeremy Roberts. I'm the Ontario PC Party candidate. I just got to start by apologizing for the cotton ball in my ear. I've just come from the doctors. You see, I was so tired of getting phone calls from politicians that my eardrum exploded. It was the only thing I could do to get them to leave me alone. I want to start by asking everyone here in the audience a very simple question, and that is, are you satisfied with the Kathleen Wynne government, or are you looking for a change? If the answer is change, you are certainly not alone. As I've been door knocking across this riding for the past 2 years, I've been meeting countless. Thank you. Is this better? Yeah. Better? Perfect. There we go. As I've been door knocking across this riding, I've been meeting thousands of people who are telling me the same three things. One, they're fed up with a government that is spending too much. Two, they're fed up with a government that is taxing them too much and making the cost of living too expensive. And three, they're fed up with services that are continuing to decline and not keep up with the demands of today. So that's what the three issues we're going to talk about tonight. And you're going to hear different visions on those three issues. And I look forward to presenting you our Ontario PC plan on how we're going to address those three areas. Thank you so much.
Okay, so now we start with questions that have been submitted by the community associations. We're going to start over with Pat, and then every question we will start with the next person. So the first question for all of you, most of them are directed to all of you. On occasion, we have a question for a particular candidate, but then we're going to reframe it for other candidates as well. So first off though, what do you think is the most important issue for Ottawa West-Nepean? Pat.
Well, I think the most important issue for Ottawa West-Nepean, as well as for the rest of Ontario, is building a future that we can rely on, and building a future where that our kids and our grandkids can have less debt over their heads and be able to find the jobs that they want to find in the markets that they're looking for. The Green Party hopes to accomplish this by investing in the green economy and providing funds for energy retrofits for our homes so that we can live, reduce our hydro bills that way.
Okay, Bob Shirelli, 1 minute, please.
As far as I'm concerned, there's no doubt about healthcare being the #1 issue in Ottawa West-Nepean. It takes government policy. It also takes strong local leadership to deliver that on behalf of the riding and the city. We have made, as I said in my introductory remarks, tremendous investments in healthcare in our community on the capital side. We've also significantly improved services. With our 2018 budget, we're making a deliberate choice to invest in care for the people of Ontario by investing more in healthcare and hospitals, home care, mental health, long-term care. It's a care budget, and it includes $1.8 billion for new civic hospital. It includes Children's Treatment Center for $105 million, which we've committed for children with exceptional complex disabilities. You've got $822 million to support healthcare and $2.1 billion for mental illness.
All right, thank you very much. I'll try not to be too harsh on the 1 minute rule, but fairly close, so thank you. Chandra, what do you think is the most important issue for Ottawa West-Nepean?
I think there's no doubt that it's fixing the state of our healthcare system. This year, for the first time in its 50-year history, the Queensway Carleton Hospital has had not one, but 2 code oranges. And a code orange is when every bed in the hospital is full, every bed in the emergency room is full. People are being treated in hallways on stretchers. The hospital was actually asking people not to come to the hospital if you had an emergency. That's simply unacceptable in 2018. And that's the result of years of cuts and spending freezes for hospital funding. The NDP has a plan to fix healthcare in Ontario. We plan to increase hospital funding and make sure that it's stable and predictable so that hospitals have the ability to plan over the long term, to hire the healthcare professionals and create the beds that they need in order to provide treatment. And we also plan to invest in other forms of healthcare, like prescription drugs for everyone, because 1 in 6 people in hospitals in Canada are there because they couldn't take their medications properly. So making sure that people can take their medications as prescribed helps to take the pressure off of our hospitals.
All right, thank you very much. Next we have Nick from the Libertarian Party. What do you think is the most important issue for Ottawa West-Nepean?
I also think that it's healthcare, and throwing more money at the problem hasn't fixed it in years and years. So we believe that opening up the market and giving people the options, more options, is the solution, so that people can choose particular plans that they need in terms of extra care, and when you open up the market as well, you have competition, even for the subsidized system, which will in turn improve it.
All right, and Jeremy Roberts, PC Party, what do you think is the most important issue in this riding?
Absolutely. I think this is an important question for us, and I think the most important issue in Ottawa West-Nepean has to be our seniors' care. Ottawa West-Nepean happens to be the oldest riding in all of Ontario, second oldest riding in Canada, next to Victoria. Now, of course, you'd never know it looking at this vibrant, beautiful young crowd, but this is an issue that we have to take seriously. Now, there's 2 things I'd like to address here. One, the long-term care side. On this side here, lost me?
Yes. No? You okay?
Testing, testing.
All right. Stop the clock. So
The red light.
A charming-looking crowd. Go.
Yes, so the red light was still on.
All right.
So on the long-term care side, we're currently looking at about a 35,000 person wait list in Ontario. This is seniors looking for long-term care. And in Ottawa, a recent report came out suggested that almost 50% of our long-term care facilities for seniors are deemed medium to high safety risks for their inhabitants. We need to change this. This is a crisis that we know was coming, and that we know is going to get even bigger in the years to come. So we need to add new beds. PC parties can add 30,000 new beds and raise those quality standards. I'm running out of time, but the other side of that is, of course, figuring out ways that we can keep seniors in their home longer so that they can continue to live the lifestyle that they've been used to. Thank you.
All right, thank you all very much. We're going to come back to all those subjects again from the questions here, for questions from the audience. Second question, however, is about the debt. Ontario's debt is estimated to be a staggering $325 billion, more than $22,500 per Ontarians, and deficits continue to mount. The province is the most indebted sub-sovereign borrower in the world. What will you and your party do to get Ontario's fiscal house in order? We're going to start with Liberal candidate Bob Shirelli.
I'm actually happy to deal with this, and judging from the audience, they'd like me to talk for 5 minutes on it rather than 1 minute. But anyway, I'll try 1 minute. In the last 40 years in Ontario, we've had 8 balanced budgets, 5 by Liberal governments, 3 by Conservative governments. Bill Davis was Premier for 14 years. He didn't have 1 balanced budget. It's a matter of borrowing and having deficits responsibly. I believe we are doing that at the present time. Our debt to GDP ratio has been going down. The economy is growing. We can afford to borrow some. We are in balance this year, and we are investing over the next 4 or 5 years tremendously in a care agenda, which includes care for seniors, more funding for hospitals. As I mentioned earlier, $2.1 billion for mental health is being done responsibly, and the level of debt is also being done responsibly. And incidentally, when we did dispose of some of the ownership of Hydro One, we put $5 billion of the proceeds on our debt.
Okay, thank you. Chandra, NDP, how would your party get Ontario's fiscal house in order?
Thanks. The NDP's fiscal plan is based on 3 principles. Number 1, we're going to make investments that benefit all Ontarians rather than spending on vote buying and backroom deals. Number 2, we're going to fund those investments sustainably, that we get away from this pattern of spending cuts and freezes that we've seen under Liberal and Conservative governments. And number 3, we're going to protect low and middle income families from being squeezed, and we're going to raise taxes on the highest earning corporations and individuals in Ontario to pay for those services. In fact, the Ontario NDP has the plan to get Ontario out of deficit the fastest, and that's not me saying that. That's the Liberal economist Mike Moffat and the former TD chief economist Don Drummond who say that. Our plan is costed. It's available online. You can check it out. All the details of our plan are available at the Ontario NDP website.
All right, thank you very much. Nick of Libertarian Party, how would your party get Ontario's fiscal house in order?
Well, with us, it's quite simple. By shrinking government and allowing free market to take over where, quite frankly, Ontario has lacked in taking responsibility for services, we would allocate the taxes to paying down our debt.
All right, thank you. And Jeremy Roberts, PC.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is, I think, one of the most disastrous legacies that we've seen from this current government. The fact that we are now the most indebted province or state in the entire world is frankly alarming. That means that we're paying around $17 billion per year in interest payments on the debt. And that's money that your children and grandchildren are going to have to pay back in the future. We need to do something about this. So our party is presenting a plan to return us to balanced budgets in the short term and to start paying off some of that debt in a responsible way. Now, we have said we're going to do this without cutting a dime from healthcare. Now, a lot of folks are going to turn around and say, oh, I don't believe you on that. I don't believe the PCs will do that. Well, I can tell you, my mentor, the late Jim Flaherty, who I worked for 6 years, he balanced the federal budget while increasing healthcare funding to provinces. It is possible, and we're going to do it.
Thank you. I think if you talk to the side, it works very well. This is what I'm finding out. If you give just a little tiny bit to the side, try that. And finally, we have Pat Creel of the Green Party.
Something that the Green Party believes very strongly in is a term called pay-as-you-go. So the Green Party believes in balanced budgets. The Green Party doesn't believe in spending money that we don't have to spend. We would work towards reducing the deficit by eliminating the subsidies of polluting companies. Ontario's economy, I believe, is one of the most heavily subsidized economies in Canada. For all you historians out there, part of the fall of the Soviet Union was because of its heavily subsidized economy. So the Green Party would work towards investing in clean technologies and good healthcare for everybody.
All right, thank you very much. A related question, only for a few of you. It's actually directed at Jeremy Roberts of the PC Party. Your leader, Doug Ford, has promised to balance the budget, as you just said, in a few years. But, you know, it would require cutting billions of dollars from that budget. Where would you like to see those cuts in order to balance the books?
Absolutely. I'm going to try from the side here. We'll see if that trick works. So the first place that we're going to start looking is at the Auditor General's report that came out just a short while ago. The Ontario Auditor General identified $1 billion worth of efficiencies that could be found in the Ontario budget without cutting a single job. So there's a place to start. Let's start taking a look at those recommendations, which include finding government buildings that have been empty for a long time that we're paying to maintain. It includes figuring out how we can consolidate some of our online services into single windows. Different things like this that will bring us into the 21st century, be more efficient, and save us money. That's the sort of thing that a PC government is going to do.
I'm just going to have my own rebuttal here to ask you. You know, the PC Party has made at least $8 billion worth of promises, looking to find $6 billion of efficiency. That's a lot of money. Why should people believe that a government can do that?
Yeah, absolutely, because that's what governments have to do. Again,
They don't ever do that.
having worked again in the finance ministry with the late Jim Flaherty, it required making some tough decisions about what we could and couldn't afford at the time. And I think in this day and age, we need to see a government that is being much more transparent and accountable with our tax dollars. Every single thing that we are spending money on, we need to talk about impact that it's having. I'm sick and tired of politicians telling you, oh, you know, what are you doing to solve this problem? Well, we're spending $20 million to solve it. That tells me nothing. I need politicians, want politicians, to start talking about, we're going to spend $20 million to reduce this problem by 20%, whatever it might be. And then we can actually hold those numbers to account. So that's the sort of thing we're going to move towards, is better accountability for our tax dollars and showing the impact of what these dollars are doing for you and your families.
So, Chandra, thank you, Jeremy. So, Chandra, we're talking about balancing the budget here. Your party made a $1.4 billion error on the platform. People are looking for governments that are going to take responsibility of our fiscal state. How can, for people who are worried that the NDP don't have a handle on the budget process, how do you respond?
Well, first of all, we only knew that we made a mistake because we made all of our costing public. Speaking of being transparent and accountable, people can see exactly how much we plan to spend on each program area and where that revenue is coming from. And that's the reason people were able to identify that that mistake was made. And Andrea Horvath took full accountability for that mistake. She admitted it was made. It doesn't actually make a difference in our projection to get Ontario out of deficit the fastest of any political parties. And it doesn't make any difference to our plan to deliver better services and programs that Ontarians need.
All right. And finally, for Bob Shirelli, the Liberal candidate, the Auditor General has said that the Liberal government that you were part of understated the deficit by as much as $6 billion a year. Again, this goes to trust on fiscal management of the government. How do you respond to those accusations?
Well, first of all, I'd say that Don Drummond, who was just quoted, has indicated that the Ontario government has the lowest expenses per capita of all the provinces. We saw what happened when Mike Harris took over in terms of trying to control the debt and the deficit. The first thing he did was close hospitals. The second thing he did was cut welfare payments by 20%. So the answer to your question in terms of the Auditor General, there is a professional disagreement between senior bureaucrats in the provincial government, which is backed up by 3 or 4 of the major consulting firms that do this sort of thing. I simply don't have enough time to indicate it, but it's one of the issues is how you account for pension funds. Every province has always, and Ontario has always used pension fund surpluses as a government asset. This Auditor General is the only one who said no, they should not be counted. And there's a disagreement there, and that amounts to some billions of dollars. And so there's one other reason for it.
Well, we're going to leave, if you're really interested in the...
30 seconds.
Okay, finish quickly.
30 seconds. The other one is in terms of expenditures in the energy sector go on the electricity bill. They don't go on the fiscal side. And so when the adjustment was made and some borrowing was done to lower the rates, she decided that that was going to go on the fiscal side. No other, across North America, it always goes on the rate side, not the government side. So they were strong enough arguments that we agreed to have a disagreement.
Right.
And that's basically what it is.
People in the audience are going to have to take it up with Mr. Shirelli afterwards if you want more details on the disagreement on accounting, but thank you for that. So now we're going to go back to a question for all the candidates. And I'm going to start with Chandra. What await times for medical procedures such as cataract surgery can take 6 to 12 months? If your party formed government, what would you do to help reduce surgical wait times?
Thanks, that's a great question. My dad was actually supposed to have knee replacement surgery earlier this year, which is something that he waited for more than a year, which is a great example of the kinds of things Ontarians are waiting way too long for. There's two key issues here. Number one is that because of the hospital overcrowding, people aren't able to have even necessary surgeries because there's just not a bed available for them. So sometimes the morning of the surgery, they get a call saying your surgery's not going to happen, you don't have a hospital bed for you today. So investing in hospitals, building more beds, making sure they have the stable, predictable funding means that that's not happening, that there is always a bed available when somebody needs to have surgery. And the second thing that we're going to do is to work with healthcare professionals to bring down the wait times for voluntary surgeries, to implement the best practices to make sure that those aren't taking 6 months or a year to get to.
All right, thank you. Nick?
Well, as I discussed earlier, by having more option, it gives you the opportunity to get the care you need. My own mother fell ill to breast cancer a while ago, and she actually had to turn to private healthcare and go to the United States and elsewhere so that she could actually beat it within a certain amount of time and not have to go on a waiting list. So this issue is actually quite close to my heart. So by having those options available here for us and not having to go elsewhere and support other economies, in that sense, it would greatly increase everybody's opportunity for good health care at a timely fashion.
All right, thank you very much. Jeremy Roberts?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing this across the board here, seeing some of our wait times hit the highest level that they've hit in a decade here in Ontario. And one of the challenges that I'm hearing about is from frontline healthcare workers. So I'll give you two examples. One, my mother, who's actually here with us tonight, my biggest cheerleader. She's a nurse, labor and delivery nurse. And she has seen firsthand how the cuts to nurses across Eastern Ontario over the past couple of years have caused wait times to increase and caused services to decline across our hospitals. Nurses are worked to the bone, and we've seen 720 of them disappear from Eastern Ontario over the past couple of years. So that's one side. We need to return funding back to those front lines, to the nurses. And on the other side, I'm not sure if we have any doctors here from neighboring Centrepoint, but I've done quite a lot of door knocking in Centrepoint, and there's quite a few doctors who live there, and they are immensely frustrated by the fact that they are caught up in ongoing negotiations over their contracts, and they're frustrated that the healthcare system has become very top-heavy.
Thank you.
We need to do better so that our doctors know that they have a good place to stick around here.
Okay, I'm going to have to be stricter on the timing here. All right, so 1 minute, folks. So we can get to as many questions as possible. Pat Friel.
Thanks. I believe the best way to improve healthcare in Ontario would be to invest directly in the seniors. I think if we brought back the home doctor visits, as well as investing in improved community health centers, we would reduce the pressure on our hospitals and improve wait times that way.
All right, thank you very much. Bob?
The Queensway Crown Hospital had a major addition built about 3.5, 4 years ago. They started doing a lot more day surgeries. Both the Fraser Institute and Wait Time Alliance have consistently ranked Ontario as having some of the shortest wait times in Canada. The Queensway Crown Hospital has received more than $37 million since 2004 to provide over 65,000 additional procedures to cut wait times. I just happened to be talking to a gentleman who's visiting his mother in a senior residence 2 days ago. And he said he had to have surgery on his knee, and he could not get into any Ottawa hospital, but one of his doctor actually said, I can get you into the Kemptville Hospital and you can have it done in 2 weeks. He went there and he had it done in 2 weeks. And there's a lot more of that. There are hospitals in catchment areas, in LIN areas, who can take on a load, but often the patients don't want to go out of their way a little bit. But
Thank you very much.
he was able to get it.
I need one of those ball things where you can like cut off the microphone. I need more power. All right, thank you very much. I know 1 minute doesn't seem long, but we want to get to these questions. I have a follow-up for Jeremy. The Liberals and the NDP are promising to increase hospital funding as well as add additional beds, 1,200 for the Liberals and I believe 2,000 for the NDP. What is the PC party planning to do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're going to continue to grow healthcare at the rate that it's been currently growing. And we're also committing to adding 30,000 new long-term care beds for seniors.
I'm going to hold you there because we're going to come back to long-term care, I think, in another question.
I'll just quickly say
I'm looking specifically at hospital funding and beds because those are, we're looking for...
And those two issues are tied directly together because a lot of our hospital beds right now are being tied up with seniors who are on wait lists.
The other parties are also promising those long-term care beds. I say this only because there's been announcements from other parties on beds and funding. Looking for a PC announcement and wondering if you can help us with that. Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to childcare. What will your party do to bring down the cost of childcare? And we are going to start with Nicholas Paliga.
Well, with childcare, like anything else, it's necessary for all of us, and by just purely throwing money at something and subsidizing it, again, it's not the way that we want to go. By having options and allowing more free market options and not taking it on as a government responsibility necessarily to an extreme, I think is our platform. We don't find that it's a government responsibility to own all of these situations. It's always better to have choice. The more choice that everybody has, then the greater the opportunities are.
All right, thank you very much. Jeremy, what would the PC party do to bring down the cost of childcare?
Yeah, so the BC Party believes strongly that parents know how to raise their children best. And we want to make sure that parents have the flexibility they need to choose whatever child care services they would prefer. That's why we're proposing a tax credit of up to 75% of the total costs of childcare, depending on your income. So if you're lower income, you'll get a greater tax credit. If you're higher income, that tax credit will shrink somewhat, so it'll be means tested. And you can use that whether you want to send your children to daycare, whether you want to hire a nanny at home, whatever that cost might be that's right for your family, so that you can make that decision rather than having to fall into a cookie cutter model.
All right, thank you very much. Pat?
While the Green Party definitely believes in affordable and free childcare for everyone in Ontario, until the government of Ontario is ready to provide these services, I think we should look to the community childcare programs that Quebec offers, because they have really great, cost-effective community childcare going on in that province. And in addition to that, we would provide a tax credit for businesses that provide daycare opportunities for parents who are working with a business, so you could come bring your child to daycare while you're at work, and the Green Party would support that with businesses.
All right, thank you very much. Bob Shirley.
Well, Doug Ford has said that he has no idea why Ontario Liberals invested in a program that is meant for children who aren't even born yet, showing that he would basically place it on the chopping block. A Liberal government is making high-quality licensed childcare free for preschoolers between ages 2 to 5, 2.5 to full-day kindergarten starting in 2020. We started moving on this particular issue by having full-day kindergarten. The economist, the governor of the Bank of Canada said that this is good economic policy. The more women who can go back to work and want to go back to work really increase the GDP of the economy. And quite frankly, there's a significant culture shift. There has been over the last decade or two where young women, young mothers, they want to work. It's not because they need to work, they want to work, that's part of their lifestyle. And they need childcare for that. And the new program that we have will save families $17,000.
All right, thank you, Mr. Shirley. And next it is Chandra. What would the NDP party do to bring down the cost of childcare? Thanks.
It's a great question because the median fees for a toddler or an infant in Ottawa right now are $1,100 a month. And that's the median, which means that 50% of families are actually paying more than that. I spoke to a couple this weekend who are bracing themselves. They're preparing to send their infant son to childcare at $70 a day, which works out to $1,400 a month. So there are families working in the city of Ottawa where one parent's entire salary is going just to pay the cost of childcare. And the Liberal plan actually won't do anything to help those parents because these are infants and toddlers. The NDP plan is going to help all families, from infants to starting junior kindergarten. We're going to create free childcare for families earning $40,000 a year or less, and fees based on income for families earning more than $40,000, with average fees of $12 a day, which works out to about $250 a month. So that's considerably less. And we're going to create 200,000 new licensed childcare spaces.
Thank you very much. And who did we start with there? Yes, we start, that's it then, that's everyone. Okay, next question then. I think, Jeremy, it was you that brought up that there's many seniors in Ottawa West-Nepean. This is a question about seniors. How would your party tackle issues specifically facing seniors, including affordable health care? A minute.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, as I said, in this riding, this is a particularly big issue. And I'd just like to start too by acknowledging, I don't know if anybody in the crowd here is a resident of the Meridian down the road there. I just door knocked the Meridian 2 weeks ago. To see it burnt down there is certainly quite startling. And to any of you who are residents, our hearts are with you and whatever we can do to help, for sure. In terms of seniors' long-term care, as I mentioned before, we're going to be investing in 30,000 new beds across the province to help deal with that long wait time. We're going to work to bring up quality of care standards, both for facilities and for training for the staff there. And then we're also going to look at ways that we can help seniors stay in their home longer. I'm always interested in different policy ideas that could help. Somebody mentioned to me the other day, perhaps we need to look into a tax credit, a caregiver tax credit to help seniors stay in their home longer. And I'd certainly be open to advancing that in a PC government.
Thank you very much. Pat Friel, what would a Green party do to help seniors?
I'm going to repeat the comment I mentioned before, and I think the Green Party believes strongly in funding at-home doctor visits. That way people don't have to leave the comfort of their own home to get the quality service that they need.
All right, thank you. Bob Shirley?
Since we've been in government, we've opened up over 10,000 new long-term care beds and redeveloped 13,000. In November, this past November, we announced a program for 40,000 long-term care beds, starting with 5,000. We've already had the intake. The bidding has taken place. Construction will probably be starting next week, next year for 5,000 of those beds. We also have increased service for residents of long-term care facilities, where they're going to get a minimum of 4 hours of personal service. and every long-term care facility is going to have an additional registered nurse, and we're providing the funding to do that. We're taking a lot of different steps regarding long-term care in what we have now, but also building new. And I might add, it was after we announced our beds that the NDP announced the beds, and it was after we both did that the Tories announced it.
Well, Chandra is next. You might want to comment on that. Chandra, what would you do to help issues facing seniors, including affordable health care?
That's a great question. Seniors built our province, and they deserve to be living in dignity and to be treated with respect and good care. Right now, there are serious gaps, and that's not just happening. It's both the shortage of beds, which Jeremy and Bob have talked about, but it's also the care that they're receiving in some long-term care homes. There have been some pretty horrific stories lately, including here in Ottawa West-Nepean, of residents not receiving that good care, of wounds infested with maggots, of people with injuries being left on the floor for hours, and that's just unacceptable. That's unacceptable for the person in that position. That's unacceptable for their loved ones to have to know that their loved one is in that position. What we're going to do is invest in long-term care homes so that we build the beds, we get rid of the wait list. That includes 15,000 beds over the next 5 years and 40,000 over the next 10. But we're also going to fund them so that everyone gets a minimum of 4 hours of hands-on care. We're going to eliminate the wait list for home care so that people who can be cared for at home get that care at home. And we're going to make sure that seniors get the dental care and prescription drugs that they need.
All right, thank you. And last on this question is Nick of the Libertarian Party.
Thank you. We all know this is very important, and all my friends discuss ways of taxing your pensions and then wisely spending it for you, where we believe that you can keep a lot more of your pension, and then we allow non-government insurers to provide boutique and specialty packages. So seniors or special needs, anyone like that can get their own specialty plans while keeping a lot of their money.
All right, thank you very much. Next question is about climate change, and our first person to speak to that is Pat Friel of the Green Party. We don't even plan this. It's amazing how this works out. So, how does your party, if it formed government, help achieve the major reductions in greenhouse gas emissions needed to meet Canada's obligation to help fight climate change?
Well, it's a very excellent and very broad question. We have the best plan for the environment, as I mentioned earlier. This involves the plan to stop subsidizing the heavily polluting companies. It also has a plan to scrap the liberal cap and trade program, which just allows for bigger, more polluting businesses to buy carbon taxes from less polluting businesses, and so they can keep polluting more. We would replace this with regular carbon tax and return the dividends that the government gets from that carbon tax directly back to you, the constituents, so that you could take that money and put it towards any kind of extra expense incurred because of that. We also believe in complete streets so that people can get around not only by car or bus, but safely travel using on their feet or riding a bike. And we also believe in investing heavily in the LRT transit.
Thank you very much. Bob Shirley on climate change.
Ontario is 96% emissions free, thanks to the fact that we actually eliminated coal generation in the province of Ontario. With respect to climate change, we have a cap and trade program whereby the actual polluters, who are businesses, and they basically all signed on the program, that they have to pay credits if they go over the amount of pollution that they can create. That money goes back to businesses for innovation. It goes back to communities for retrofits. Every dollar that comes in from the businesses from cap and trade goes back into reducing pollution. And it is a method that is recommended for most jurisdictions around the world. It's working in Ontario, it's working in Quebec, it's working in California, it's working in a lot of jurisdictions. And the money goes back into reducing pollution.
Thank you. Chandra?
Thanks. This is a really important question. I have 3 kids, and I'm really worried about the kind of world they're going to grow up in if we don't do something serious about climate change. I worry about the kind of predictions we're seeing for what will happen if we don't get serious, and I want to see Ontario do a lot more. The NDP has a plan to help individuals, businesses, and communities adapt to become more energy efficient so that you can do renovations to your home to make it more energy efficient, so that the communities that are hit the hardest or that are struggling the most to deal with energy efficiency get support from the government so that they can do that. We're also going to invest in public transit so that it's accessible and friendly and people are able to use it when they want to. And we're going to continue the cap and trade system, and we're going to set hard targets on carbon emissions and reducing air and water pollution, and we're going to meet those targets.
All right, thank you very much. Nick Kalika.
We don't believe that taking your money is going to solve anything. The cap and trade is just taxing you. Regulation. Regulation is simple. You regulate emissions, but by taxing you on emissions, it's a punishment. It has nothing to do with keeping things clean.
All right, and Jeremy Roberts.
The BC Party takes climate change seriously, but we have a difference of opinion than the other parties in terms of the best way to tackle this. You're going to hear from the other parties that what they want to do is implement strategies that are going to make life more expensive for you. So the Liberals have implemented this Green Energy Act program where they built all of this expensive green energy program and overpaid by close to $9.2 billion on many of these contracts, according to the Auditor General. We don't think that's the right way to do it because that's made your hydro bills more expensive. The NDP would propose continuing cap and trade or carbon tax. That's not what we're going to do because we know that that just means more expenses on your bill. We're going to invest in technologies that are actually solving this problem. Technologies like Saskatchewan's carbon capture technology, which is making great advances there and in other jurisdictions. That's how we solve this problem, not by taxing everyone to death.
How would you, if your party has said they'd cancel cap and trade, how will you return all the credits that have been purchased? How will that work? I hope I am representing your platform properly. Cap and trade will be canceled. How will that work?
Sure. We'll have to take a look into the exact details of how that will work, but I'm sure we can sort out a refund strategy for those companies who have purchased credits. But at the end of the day, what we're focused on is not making life more expensive for folks, because we've seen that 11-cent increase over the past little while at the gas tanks. That's what we're committed to getting rid of. We don't want folks to have to pay that because it's not the companies who are ending up dealing with that cost. They're passing it down straight to all of you.
Thank you. Sorry, that's 30 seconds rebuttal. I should have said that. I apologize. I have also a 30-second question for Mr. Shirelli. You say we're 96% emissions free. What on earth could you possibly mean by that? Can you explain that, please?
Yes, Ontario was 52% of our electricity was coming from burning coal generation. It's the cheapest type of electricity to create, but it's the most polluting. And so when we took over government and started rebuilding the system that had deteriorated, we took the opportunity to start eliminating coal generation.
So when you say 96% emissions free, you mean the electricity?
The electricity sector is 96%.
There's still cars and other things. I just want a clarification on that.
Yeah, but what I would like to know from the Conservative candidate is how is he projecting how much carbon he's going to reduce from going into the air? He says nothing about that. He has no targets.
All right.
He has some vague idea about new technology. Like by the time we get new technology, half of us will be breathing with some assistance.
Well, hang on a bit. I'll let you answer that, Jeremy, please.
Sure, yeah. Having actually studied this issue quite extensively, what we've seen is that strategies like carbon taxes do not actually reduce emissions enough to cause a dent in temperature decrease. They're not going to solve the problem at the end of the day. If we actually want to take this challenge seriously and do it in a way that's not going to hurt each of us at the pocketbooks, we need to look at some of these new technologies. Tesla's solar batteries as a way to actually hold some of that power that we're generating through renewables. That might actually make some of them cost effective as opposed to what they are today. Again, carbon capture technology out of Saskatchewan. They're retrofitting factories there and capturing carbon emissions and burying them deep in the ground where they can be neutralized.
All right.
That allows those businesses to continue to thrive, build, create jobs,
Oh, yeah, that's-
without actually having to punish you.
Okay, a little back and forth, it is a debate, but we are going to move on. I'm just going to clarify, right, with the original answer, or your initial answer is a minute, and then if we have a little back and forth, half a minute of that. All right, thank you. Moving on, a question here from one of our associations. An Ottawa teacher at John McCrae's secondary school is achieving encouraging results by urging students to guide their own learning and pursue personal betterment rather than just grades. Would you support research to study school programs that give students more control over their own learning? We are going to start with Liberal candidate Bob Shirley.
I think it's a great idea, but I don't think it should be used exclusively. I think encouraging creativity in the schools is an excellent way to proceed. I think it's already happening in a lot of classrooms. I've got 2 grandchildren, 11 and 13, and I can tell you that the type of creativity that they're demonstrating, and as their friends are demonstrating, is absolutely fabulous. Those kids that age are 5 times smarter than we were at that age from my assessment. And a lot of it is coming from creativity. So I say go for it, but it shouldn't be exclusively that way. The teachers should permit it and encourage that creativity amongst the students.
All right, thank you. NDP candidate Chandra Pasman.
My 5-year-old son thinks he's 5 times smarter than me. I would love to see teachers have the freedom to foster that kind of creativity and learning in classrooms. But what I think we're seeing right now, and what I'm hearing from a lot of teachers as I've been knocking on doors across ridings, is that they just don't have the resources and capacity to do that right now. The schools are overcrowded. They're dealing with a lot of behavioral issues in the classroom, and what they need is more teachers, more educational assistants, and lower class sizes so that they actually have the space and the freedom to nurture the creativity of the students and not just focus on managing the behavioral issues and dealing with the lowest common denominator in the schools. The other thing the NDP will do is we're going to do a curriculum review, and that's an opportunity for that kind of research into best practices for curriculum and what actually helps our children to learn the best in the most optimal environment.
All right, thank you very much. Next is Libertarian candidate Nick Kaliga.
We believe that students will be able to enroll in any school of their own choice, of their parents' choice, whether it be private or public. So it should be up to the parents.
Okay, and next, Jeremy Roberts of the PC Party.
Okay, yeah, I'm not familiar with this specific teacher, but I'm looking forward to reading more because I don't know about all of you, but one of the things that I'm very worried about when I speak to young people today is how are we promoting 2 things, personal responsibility and critical thinking. And I think we need to be doing a better job with that. I agree completely with Chandra on the fact that we need to do a curriculum review. We need to ask ourselves, what are some things that need to be added to the curriculum? Financial literacy, computer programming, maybe bring back life skills. Are there things that need to be improved? Our math scores are not keeping up to par. We need to figure out how to bring those math scores up so that we're competitive in this global economy. And lastly, maybe there's some things that need to be reviewed. I speak to a lot of teachers who are saying EQAO is not their favorite thing in the world. So these are things that I think we need to do through a full curriculum review under a PC government.
All right, and Pat Friel of the Green Party.
The Green Party absolutely supports ways to foster creative learning like that, although I think the best way to do that would be to increase funding to schools. And the Green Party believes we can achieve better funding to schools by merging school boards in Ottawa so that we can use those savings and reinvest it directly back into the education system. I also personally believe we should be investing in an affordable eyewear program for kids in elementary school and high school so that they can actually see the board and see the textbooks and learn better that way.
All right, thanks very much. More of a local question now. Many of our neighborhoods are being transformed through infill. The city says that the directive of intensification comes from the province. Where would you draw the line between the need for intensification, and the right of ratepayers to the community fabric that they invested in the first place. We're going to start with Chandra.
Thanks, that's a really important question. The NDP believes that communities should have the ability to have their say over what's happening within their community, and too often in Ontario that hasn't been happening. The Ontario Municipal Board has just overruled local residents and local municipal councils over what's been happening, and that can't happen anymore. The community should have the say, and so we want to make sure that that happens, and that includes things like zoning within cities. We want cities to be able to decide where they're going to build things like affordable housing, where they're going to build things like transit. We want them to be able to consult with the residents, to make a plan with the community and move forward with that plan. And right now, the zoning regulations that were introduced by the province of Ontario don't allow them to do that, and we're going to fix that so that cities like Ottawa can do that.
All right, thank you. Nick?
Absolutely, we believe that the communities themselves need to have the ability to have referendums on issues involving themselves, so that the government can't just tell them what to do without a say in their community.
All right, Jeremy, on infill development.
Yeah, this is an important question because a lot of us in these elections get very caught up with what all the leaders are saying, and we forget that at its core, we're electing a local representative. I'll give you an example. I grew up over in City View, just a couple blocks away from here, and as I've door knocked around there, I'm noticing that a lot of those big, beautiful properties are being bought up and subdivided, and it's changing the character of the neighborhood. It's changing the character of the streets that I grew up on. And so as your local representative, this is something that I'm going to take seriously. We need to strike a balance between increasing supply so that we can drive housing prices across the city down, while also protecting the characters of our communities. And as a local representative for you, that's going to be a priority. Thank you.
All right. Pat? Where does the Green Party feel on, intensification versus fabric of the community?
Well, the Green Party believes strongly in participatory democracy. We think that in order to get the community out and more involved in the decision-making process, we need to re-engage that discussion in electoral reform. That way we can have governments in place that people are proud to be a part of and proud to have a voice in.
All right, thank you. And finally, we have Bob Shirley of the Liberal Party on this issue.
First of all, I think that community associations are very much needed, and there's tremendous leadership there in almost any particularly urban areas across the province. They do a good job of monitoring what's happening in their community. They're by and large very, very extremely responsible. But the issue of intensification is a province-wide goal or principle. The actual implementation of how much density you're going to permit is through the official plan, which is a local decision, and it's made by a local council. There have always been appeals from the Ontario from councils to the Ontario Municipal Board, and very often developers would always go there and they would often win. We've amended, we've changed, we've abolished the Ontario Municipal Board, we put a new agency in place, and it says the decision of council is paramount. So that's going to give a lot of power to community associations in terms of controlling what happens. And so much of the intensification comes from amending the official plan. That ought not to happen.
This is the last question from the community associations, and then we'll move on to questions from you folks that you've written in. So, last question here is, a lot of Ontarians believe the Liberal government has made a mess of the hydro system and that it's costing customers far too much. What do you believe is needed to fix the hydro system in Ontario, make it more affordable for consumers? We start with Nick Paliga of the Libertarian Party.
Yes, hydro rates are ridiculous in this province, and we're going to repeal the Green Energy Act, eliminate time of use billing, indiscriminatory delivery charges, crushing rural residents. That's a major issue. I mean, people in rural areas don't even have to turn their lights on and will get a bill for half the amount. Terminate for convenience all subsidized generation contracts. So by doing that, we hope to bring more affordability to people so that they'll be able to keep the lights on.
All right, thanks very much. Jeremy Roberts of the Progressive Conservative Party.
This is a pretty disastrous piece of the current government's legacy. I was door knocking the other day over on Seymour, which is just east of Maribel. Met a family over there, they own a small business. 10 years ago, their hydro rates were $3,200 per bill. They're now over $9,000 per bill. At that rate, they told me they could have hired a couple more employees. That's what this means. This hydro rate issue is not just about getting your rates down at home, which is incredibly important, but also about making sure that we're not driving our small businesses out. So our PC party, we're going to do two things. One, we're going to get the rates down in the short term by returning Hydro One dividends to consumers and by taking out the conservation fee that's hidden in your hydro bill. And second, we're going to make structural changes going forward so that this doesn't continue, namely canceling future contracts under the Green Energy Act.
All right, thank you very much. Next, we have Pat Friel of the Green Party.
The Green Party would conduct a public review and cost analysis of renewable energy alternatives and use those findings to invest directly into renewable energy alternatives. We would roll back the Liberal Hydro Plan as well as amend the Green Energy Act so that we can have more space to work with when it comes to renewable energy. We also believe the best way to reduce your hydro bill is to reduce the amount of energy that you consume, and we would invest $4.18 billion in a 4-year green building and business fund. We would get this funding by canceling the Pickering nuclear plant and getting back into negotiations with getting cheap hydropower from Quebec.
All right, thanks very much. 1 minute, Bob Shirelli from the Liberal Party.
The statement that Ontario has the highest electricity bills in North America is a myth. Families in cities like New York, Boston, Charlottetown, Regina, Halifax, and Moncton are paying more than the Ontario average. For those who are contesting to become Premier of this province, the NDP have indicated that they're going to reduce rates by 30%. That will cost $3.6 billion. It's not in your plan. Where are you going to get the money? The Conservatives are saying they're going to reduce hydro rates by 12%. That's going to cost $1.3 billion a year. You have no fiscal plan. You've got nothing to back it up. You've got no, all it is puffery in an election campaign. It just doesn't add up. I know the numbers. I was the minister, and we put a 10% discount on the bill for 5 years, and that cost us $1.2 billion a year from the tax base. And you guys are promising more, and you're not coming up with the money. It just doesn't make sense, and it's just election puffery.
All right, thank you very much. Try to hold our applause to the end, thank you. Andrew, you are the last person on this question.
So Bob, it's clear you haven't actually read the NDP plan because we do say where we're getting the money from. And I'm not sure it's any consolation to Ontarians who have been sold a bill of goods that people in New York are paying more money for hydro than they are. In fact, when I talk to people, there's no issue that makes people more angry than the way the Liberals have managed our hydro system and the way they tried to sell us a bill of goods about it. They told us that it was going to reduce prices, and instead prices soared by 300% after they privatized it. The NDP is the only party that is prepared to make Hydro One public again, which is the only way to reduce hydro rates over the long term and make sure that our hydro is being planned in the best interest of Ontarians. We're also going to end and renegotiate contracts that require us to pay for hydro that is being sold at cutthroat prices to New York, as well as contracts that require us to pay for hydro that is not even being generated. We are also going to end mandatory time of use premiums, which punish people for when they have to be home, which they can't help, and have done nothing to actually save energy in Ontario.
All right, thank you, Chandra. And 30-second rebuttal from Bob Shirelli.
Yeah, I understand you're going to use the dividends from Hydro One to help reduce the rates. Well, you've already spent that because you said you're going to use that money to help buy back the shares. So you want to spend the money twice. This is another big mistake in your program. similar to the $1.3 billion, and similar to the pricing of reducing the cost of electricity.
All right, thank you very much. That is all of the questions from the associations. Thank you very much for those questions. Now, questions from you. I'm going to try to put them in some sort of, subject cluster. So we're going to start with some questions about education. I'm very thrilled to see we have a question from a grade 5 student who says there are 30 people in this student's class, 30 kids. Are you going to make her or his classes smaller? We start with Jeremy.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. I'm not sure where our grade 5 student is, but it is so great. There, right there, excellent. It is so great. Round of applause for sure. Because it is wonderful to have young people here. I got involved in politics when I was 14 to fight for my younger brother. So it's really good to see you getting involved at a young age. The PC Party believes that we definitely need to make sure that we are making the class sizes appropriate for the right support for those students. One of the biggest issues for me as a sibling with someone with special needs is the woeful lack of resources that we've seen for our special needs students across Ontario. There aren't enough EAs, there aren't enough teachers. Those are issues that I personally am going to champion in a PC government, and look forward to fighting those issues alongside passionate constituents like you.
And can I have a follow-up with that for 30 seconds? I don't recall the party making that announcement. What is the plan? What's the PC Party plan for classroom sizes, the costing, anything?
Yeah, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm not sure we've made a specific announcement on classroom sizes, but we have committed to saying we need to be doing better at serving the students in our classroom. And once again, on a personal note, that's going to be a key issue for me.
All right, thank you very much. Pat Friel of the Green Party.
As mentioned before, with the merging of the public and the Catholic school boards and the reinvestment of that money back into schools, we will not have to close down any more schools and offset the students moved from that closed school into current schools and making classroom size figures that way.
All right, we're going to come back to that controversial subject in a moment. Thank you very much. Bob Shirelli, on the sizes of classes, are you going to make this young ladies?
Well, first of all, offline, I'd like to know what the school is and get more details on it. I know I was in a grade 5 class 2 days ago. I often go into grade 5 classes. They do a unit on government, and I enjoy engaging with them. There were 18 students in the class, and I know that my 2 grandchildren, their class sizes are nowhere close to 30. So there may be aberrations out there for larger class sizes. I would like to do some research and find out what school boards they are and where they are, and try to resolve that problem for them, because 30 is too big. 30 is not the norm, so for a youngster who asked the question, I wouldn't mind spending 15 or 20 minutes with your parents to discuss that issue. Thank you.
All right, take that up afterwards offline. But Chandra Passma, what would the NDP party stand on sizes of classrooms?
Thanks so much. That's a great question. I have a daughter named Mira who's 7 and she's in grade 2, and she looks up to big kids in grade 5 like you. And when Mira started kindergarten, we actually picked the school that she goes to because the other school that we were looking at had 36 children in kindergarten. And Mira is kind of a shy, quiet kid, and she would have been completely and totally lost in a class of 36 kids. And we were really lucky that we had a choice, because not every parent in Ontario has a choice between multiple schools. So what the NDP wants to do is fix the funding formula so that schools are getting enough money to hire more teachers and hire more educational assistants, and make sure that there aren't classes that are so big like yours.
Thank you. And finally, on this, Nick.
It is a problem of funding, and so we believe we're going to attach the funding to the student and not the school, and therefore there will be enough money for smaller classes.
All right, thanks very much. Keeping on this subject, what is your position on the issue of one public school system for Ontario. Right now, we have English, French, public, Catholic, all funded publicly. What's your position on a single school board and why? We start with Pat Friel. You brought it up yourself. So Pat Friel of the Green Party.
Well, the history behind the 4 boards that are in Ontario right now are very rich. I'm not going to get into it, but I believe it's important that we keep the French boards in Ottawa, especially because if someone were to pursue federal politics, they need to have French in there if they want to become Prime Minister one day. And I think fostering that relationship with the French culture in Ontario is really important.
What about public versus Catholic school board?
What do you mean by that?
There's a big question about whether both public and Catholic school boards should be funded. Where does your party stand on that?
Definitely, we would work towards merging the public and the Catholic boards so that we just have an English board and a French board.
All right. Bob Shirley?
First of all, I think that the French board should, the Francophone community should have their own school board. There's obviously, I think, a lot of people recognize the fact there's a constitutional roadblock to unifying them. But I think that there's a lot of progress that can be made by sharing facilities between the Catholic and the non-Catholic boards. There are some communities that are doing that voluntarily. I think that whichever government, whoever forms government, should look at ways of sharing facilities between Catholic and the non-Catholic boards. It's actually working in some communities, and we should examine if that could be done generically across the whole system.
All right, Chandra.
The NDP respects the right of Franco-Ontarians to receive government services and education in their own language, and we will do nothing to take that right away from them. We also recognize that the Catholic school system is constitutionally protected, and rather than waste our time getting into a constitutional fight, we're going to focus on the more urgent priorities in education, such as the fact that right now, virtually every school board in the province is spending more on special education than they are getting from the province. So we're going to make sure that funding for special education is actually based on need instead of an arbitrary formula. We're going to make sure that the funding formula for education gets fixed, and that students are not forced to go to school in buildings that are crumbling, badly in need of repair, that aren't adapted for the heat on extreme weather days, that kids have a safe, high-quality environment to learn in, and a good, high-quality education while they're there.
All right, thank you very much. Nick?
First, student funding will apply equally to non-government schools, although they will not be required to receive government funding.
Can you explain that a little bit more? I'm not sure I understood your answer. I don't know about you folks, but I need more information.
It'll be equal. All government funding will be equal for all, and it'll be attached to the student again, but it'll be equal for all schools, just attached to the student and not the school itself.
All right, thanks. And Jeremy Roberts.
Yeah, the BC party is going to maintain the 4 school boards that we currently have. We're not going to engage in sort of a divisive debate over whether or not those should be merged. As has previously been said, we need to respect our bilingual community and also the fact that the Catholic schools are enshrined in our Constitution. What we're going to focus on is ways that we can actually improve our education system. I spoke earlier about how we're going to review the curriculum. I think that's something very important because at the end of the day, regardless of which school board you're going to, we want all of our children in Ontario to be getting the level of education that they deserve to be competitive in this global economy, and particularly to be getting their money's worth, the tax dollars that you're putting in to our education system.
All right, thank you very much. I just wanted to say for a point of order, because a number of you brought up the Constitution, that several other provinces in this country have actually abolished the Catholic school board. It's not that it can't be done, but I thank you for all of your answers. Our last question on elementary school is, what is each of your positions on the new sex education curriculum in public schools, and would your party make any changes to that curriculum that's now being used in the schools? And we are starting with Bob Shirley of the Liberal Party.
First of all, I don't agree with the term sex ed because it doesn't teach education in sex, and there are a lot of multicultural people who see sex ed and they think that it means teaching sex to the kids. It's a health and physical education curriculum. And it had not been, a new curriculum had not come forward over a period of, I think, almost 20 years. Today, kids see more, they're exposed to more, they need to be educated. But I want to say from the beginning that for those who object to it, we provided the right for people not to participate in that. So for parents who don't want their kids to have this type of curriculum, they don't have to go. They have a choice to say no. Okay, so that's a starting point. Secondly, it's done by grades. At each grade, they teach them. They teach them about their bodies, how their bodies are going to change, and so on and so forth. It's absolutely necessary.
Thank you very much.
And I support it.
Okay, thank you. Chandra passes.
So I actually have kids in school right now who are learning the curriculum, and as a parent, I really appreciate that. I think the curriculum needed to be updated from what I learned when I was in school. There are things that exist now that didn't exist back then, like sexting. But also, quite frankly, my education was lacking in some areas, like a conversation on consent. And I'm happy that my kids are going to have that kind of conversation in school. And as parents, we are informed each and every year what our children are learning, and we're able to have conversations with them about it at home. And I think, quite frankly, that the Conservative Party has raised this issue and is trying to drive fear among parents over this issue to distract from the fact that they don't have a plan to address the real problems in education, such as the lack of adequate funding for schools, the lack of adequate funding to address repairs in schools, and to make sure that special education is actually funded based on need.
Thank you very much. Nick, please.
We believe that all kids should have access to all types of education, sex ed being one of them. Now, what we don't agree with is telling them at what age you have to learn what grade you have to learn what. There's different developments, different children, different people go through different developmental stages and are ready for different things at different times. And it should be up to the parents to make those decisions because ultimately they know, not the government.
All right, thank you very much. Jeremy?
I think there's been a lot of misinformation out there about what the Conservative Party position is on this issue, so I'd like to clarify it for everyone. What the PC Party believes is that we need to reopen this and ensure that there is adequate parental consultation. This is one of the top issues that has actually come up at the doors for me as I've door knocked across this riding. The other day, I was chatting with a doctor over at Qualicum. She said that when the curriculum was being developed, she was advocating strongly and had written a letter to the Ministry of Education saying that the curriculum should include training for older young women in grade 12, on how to test themselves to see if they have lumps on their breasts. She thought this was something very important. Never received a response from anyone. The consultation wasn't there, and we need to make sure we do better in ensuring that that consultation happens, both for health reasons, for faith reasons, and to make sure that parents across the province are comfortable with this subject matter in our schoolrooms that's being taught. That's our position.
Thank you. Your mic, did everyone hear Jeremy's answer all right? I know the mic is going in and out a bit.
We can hear him without the mic.
Okay, well, technical, it's the moving around, actually. It's the moving around. I apologize. All right. And last but not least, Pat.
The Green Party absolutely supports the idea of a sex ed curriculum, and as Mr. Shirelli mentioned, parents do have the option to opt their child out of the program, which is totally acceptable. I think the only part of any curriculum that the Green Party would be interested in modifying would be including financial literacy in the high school curriculum.
All right, thanks very much. And here's a question on post-secondary education. And it is, what is your party's position on helping families with the high cost of post-secondary education? We start with Chandra.
That's a great question. I work on post-secondary issues in my day job at the Canadian Union of Public Employees, so I see every day how the costs of college and university are skyrocketing in Ontario. And quite frankly, it scares me that I'm never going to be able to afford to send my 3 kids to university. The NDP has a plan to address the high costs. We want to help families to make it more affordable because we know that college and university is one of the best chances of finding a good job, as well as for allowing people to develop their critical thinking skills. We're going to convert loans into grants, so when a student applies to the Ontario Student Assistance Program, if they qualify, they will get a grant instead of a loan that they have to pay back. And for the many graduates who are still paying back their student loans, sometimes even years after they graduated, we're going to remove the interest on that debt so that you're no longer paying interest to the government every single year when you make that payment.
All right, thank you very much. Nick of the Libertarian Party.
The issue for us is not education being expensive. Yes, it is. The issue is them not being able to pay it. So by creating an environment so that they have jobs when they come into school, they would be able to repay their student loans better than at the current rate of coming out of university and having low-paying jobs. So that's the issue for us. We don't really have an issue with the cost.
All right, thanks very much. Jeremy of PCs.
Yeah, I think we definitely as a government need to be doing a better job at providing support to students going into post-secondary education who are going into high-demand fields. And we need to base this based on merit. We need to support our students who are showing potential and who are heading into those areas where we have high employment needs. But more on top of that, I think we also need to do a better job at making life more affordable across the board. I'm a recent graduate myself. I've got a ton of student debt behind me that I'm working to pay off. And it would be very helpful if we had a government that was reducing our hydro rates so we didn't have so much on our bill, that was reducing our taxes, perhaps by making anyone on minimum wage not have to pay income tax anymore, which is a PC party issue. And also by looking at other ways that we can bring down that cost of living, gas prices being another one, to put more money back in your pocket to help you afford those costs that you're making to invest in your future.
Thank you very much. Pat.
The Green Party has been a very long advocate for free tuition for all people of Ontario and Canada. We believe that investing in our people in a fiscally responsible way is the best way to go about developing a prosperous society.
All right, thanks very much. And finally, Bob Torelli.
The program that we have in place now is recognized worldwide as one of the best in terms of student support. It's based on family income, because your family has low income. Shouldn't cause you not to get a college or university education. So if you're in a family with $50,000 income or less per year, you get 100% free tuition. 250,000 students in Ontario this year got free tuition because they're in that category. The next category, if you have a higher income, you will still get a very, very significant reduction in your tuition. They also have added in, one of the problems with student loans, for example, is the fact that when students graduate, they don't have work, they start collecting interest, or they don't have enough income to pay the loan down. We put a provision in that unless they receive $35,000 a year salary, they're not going to have to start paying back the student loan, which gives them a much freer start after graduation.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move on from education. Small business question. Business groups in Ontario, some of them have argued that the minimum wage increase to $14 an hour is hurting their businesses. Soon it will be $15 an hour, or at least under some parties' platforms. What is your party going to do to support small businesses? We start with Nick Paliga of the Libertarian Party.
Well, the way that the minimum wage increase was introduced hit small businesses very hard, because it was in one large quantity at the same time, instead of moving up gradually with inflation, so that businesses could better prepare. So by keeping minimum wage at a rate that businesses could prepare for, it wouldn't send businesses under when you just hit them with a big cost all at the same time. Now, that being said, we wouldn't implement things like that, and we would create an open market so that businesses could flourish.
All right, thanks very much. Jeremy Roberts.
I think most of us know that small businesses are the #1 employer of folks across Ontario. They're the #1 job creator. And we need to be doing a better job at supporting our small businesses. That means two different things. One side, seeing how we can make it more affordable for small businesses. I spoke earlier about the need to lower hydro rates to help our small businesses to keep their businesses operating here in this province. We're also going to look at lowering the small business tax rate to put a bit more money back in their pockets, to be able to reinvest in growing their business, hiring more employees, whatever they so choose. But there's an equally important second side to that, and that's the regulatory burden on small businesses. Many small businesses I'm talking to are saying there is too much paperwork that they have to do right now. So we're going to look at bringing in something like the 1-for-1 rule, whereby every new piece of regulation introduced means that another has to be taken away. That'll help keep the regulatory burden from growing any further.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Pat Friel.
The Green Party absolutely supports the minimum wage to a livable wage of $15 an hour. To help reduce this impact on small businesses, the Green Party plans on increasing the employer health tax credit up to $1 million. This would provide immediate cash flow relief to small businesses to lessen the impact of the hike in minimum wage. We would also foster an increase in green jobs in local economies through a $3.1 billion investment to green businesses.
All right, thanks very much. Bob Shirley.
There are too many people who can't earn a living wage. A lot of them are single moms, a lot of them have 2 and 3 jobs, and it's very, very difficult. So that's one of the main reasons why we brought forward the minimum wage program. What we did for small business is we reduced the small business tax by 22%. We've created incentives for them to get training dollars to train people. You know, just today I was knocking on the door. It was a small businessman who answered the door, and he said, you know what, it's going to cost me a little bit more, but I support the minimum wage because it's about time people caught up. Around the world, there are all kinds of people in growing economies who are getting left behind. Minimum wage is one way to help them. Free daycare is another way to help them. There are all kinds of things we need to do for those people to catch up.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you. Oh, that's pretty good. Chandra Pasco.
Thanks. The NDP recognizes that small businesses are really important to our economy, so we have a multi-pronged strategy to support small businesses. The Ontario government procures annually $6 billion in services and products from businesses in Ontario, and we're going to make sure that at least 1/3 of that comes from small businesses every year. We're also going to take prescription drugs off the table. The province will be providing that for all Ontarians, so employers will no longer need to provide prescription drug benefits to their workers. And we're going to lower their hydro rates by making Hydro One public again. We're also going to make sure that Ontarians have enough money to spend at local businesses by making life more affordable, investing in affordable childcare, in affordable post-secondary education, and making sure that everybody gets prescription drugs and dental care. Because when people have money in their pockets, they tend to spend it locally, and that supports their small businesses.
All right, thanks very much. We're going to shift to a new subject of wine and beer. Maybe it's the hour, I don't know. But EC Leader Doug Ford has promised to open up beer and wine sales to corner stores, and possibly other box stores and grocery stores in Ontario. He also, I add myself, that he recently announced bringing back the buck of beer, you know, $24 for a case of beer. I think we haven't seen that for 10 years. What is your position on the issue, and what are the pros and cons of expanding the availability of wine and beer sales in Ontario? We'll start with the PC party.
I think you've summed it up well, Joanne.
I'm just saying the facts here. What do you think the pros and cons are?
Indeed. Yeah, so BC government believes that we need to move towards a more competitive market for beer and wine and spirits, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that this is a reasonable price for consumers. Wouldn't it be nice on a nice long weekend like we had 2 weeks back to be able to go to the corner store and pick up a case of beer rather than have to go to the LCBO? This is something that I think all of us will benefit from, because we'll see that lower cost across the board, we'll see increased convenience, and as long as we maintain our very high standards in terms of IDing and all of those, we'll make sure that we keep it out of hands that shouldn't be drinking too early.
All right, thanks. We move to Pat Friel.
The Green Party also believes in increasing or in providing a competitive market for beer and wine sale in Ontario. As for the $1 beer thing, I believe that's a little bit ludicrous myself, because I feel like that just kind of increases the accessibility of it to people who shouldn't be drinking it in the first place.
All right. Bob Shirley.
I support the process that we have at the present time. There have been significant studies by credible researchers, academics and so forth, that indicate that having beer and wine available at corner grocery stores is not helpful to the community, and it creates some abuse problems. It creates more youth problems in neighborhoods as well. I think the approach that we've taken to have it more available in some of the larger outlets, I think is a happy compromise. But I would not support it in every corner grocery store as has been recommended. And certainly, a buck of beer is just another bumper sticker. Call it what you want.
All right. Chandra.
I think it's funny that we know far more about Doug's plans for beer and wine than we know about Doug Ford's plan for healthcare. The NDP doesn't have a plan to change beer and wine sales. We've invested our time and effort in coming up with a plan to fix healthcare, to invest in affordable childcare, to invest in our schools and post-secondary education, to make life more affordable for Ontarians. So yes, at the end of the day, people will have more money in their pockets to buy beer and wine if that's where they choose to spend their money.
All right, thanks very much. And we finish with Nick.
Again, like everything else, open free market. It's by opening the market, it puts more money in your pockets by creating the competition. And also, we want to lower the taxes on alcohol as well, so people aren't just traveling out of the province or down to the States for affordable alcohol products. You should be entitled to a free market and affordable product.
All right, thanks very much. All right, we're going to lightning round. One question. I just made this up right now. It's only 30 seconds, but it's a quick question. We're going to start with Pat, actually. So it is, what is your party's position on continuing to expand light rail transit in Ottawa? So 30 seconds, we start with Pat.
The Green Party supports us 110%. We want to see phase 3 of the LRT rail come to Ottawa sooner than the 2031 projection, and we will make this happen by increasing funding to it and funding 50% of the operating costs. We would pay for this funding by implementing levy charges and parking fees and congestion charges and traffic to generate revenue that way.
All right, Bob Shirley.
Well, we already have $1.7 billion into the projects. We're the largest funder in the LRT project. About 2 weeks ago, we just announced $50 million to advance time-wise going into Riverside South, because most of the congestion that we're seeing on Woodruff Avenue, Maribel Road, all the north-south arteries is just unacceptable. And by putting that money in, together with $30 million that's coming from other sources, they were able to get the procurement in this round of LRT, and so we're going to have relief a lot sooner than later because of that investment.
Thanks very much. Chandra.
The NDP is committed committed to the funding for Phase 2 of the LRT as well as the extension to Riverside South. And as your MPP, I will fight to see that we get the funding for Phase 3. The NDP is also going to provide 50% of municipal transit operating costs, which for Ottawa works out to $140 million a year, which means that for a change, you'll get to see expanded service and reduced fares instead of higher fares and reduced service.
All right, thanks very much. Nick?
Absolutely. As we grow, we have to expand all the infrastructure, but we believe that government does a poor job, and by opening up the market to private companies as well and introducing tolls, then we can afford more, faster, and better.
Perfect. And Jeremy, you get the last word on this one.
Back in 2015, I was proud to be a member of the staff and advise the federal finance minister to provide funding for LRT here in Ottawa. I was proud as a member of this current PC team to recommend that we provide funding to LRT Phase 2, and I will continue to fight to defend LRT funding here in our community because it's something I've been waiting to use my entire life.
Me too, I feel. I feel like I've been covering it forever, but just on the point of clarification on the $50 million extension into Riverside South, does your party have a position on that?
I believe we've committed to funding Phase 2. The Riverside South expansion is part of Phase 3.
No, it was actually announced by the Liberal government the week before the writ was dropped. You heard Chandra say that the NDP is also committing to that. That's into the south part of the city. I'm just wondering if the PC party has a position on that.
Sure, I'll have to take a look at the numbers, but I'm happy to sit down with anybody to look at a credible plan to see if it's going to serve our community well.
All right, thanks very much. There's a question here on our democratic system. Some people are frustrated by the first past the post system. What would your party do, or what you personally do, to ensure that every vote counts? We're going to start this one with Bob Shirelli.
Our party did have a referendum on it 2 or 3 elections ago, and the public voted no, and I still stay with that decision. I support the existing process.
All right, Chandra.
I think the current electoral system is one of the reasons why we see so much cynicism about politics, as well as some of the questionable activities that have been happening lately around nominations and that sort of thing. We want to make sure that there are clear rules that apply to every political party. The NDP will create an electoral reform commission to look at our laws around financing, to look at our laws around how voters lists are created, how elections are held, and that electoral reform commission will be asked to come up with a form of proportional representation to recommend to Ontario.
All right, thanks very much. Nick?
We have a policy on democratic reform that to enact recall legislation and to be able to give power to each voter referendums for certain types of legislations, including any new or increased level of taxation will come to a referendum, so that gives more power to the actual voter themselves.
All right, thanks very much. Jeremy?
The PC party is fine with our current system of first past the post. It's served us well for 100 years, and I think it will continue to serve us well. And frankly, if the NDP wants to exert a whole bunch of effort following in Prime Minister Trudeau's footsteps to study this issue and then come to some sort of conclusion instead of focusing on the real issues like getting our finances in order, all the power to you.
All right, and finally, Pat.
The Green Party absolutely supports electoral reform. We believe the best system to put in place would be mixed member proportional representation. On the ballot, you would be able to vote for the party you want to see in government and your local candidate that you want to see in government, and I think that would allow for a much more diverse and effective government. Green Party candidates are special in the sense that Green Party candidates are not whipped in the legislature. You have to whip the votes. We don't associate with any special interest groups or we don't have any buddies in big business. And by special interest groups, not even environmental groups associate with the Green Party, and that's because we choose not to associate with special interest groups. And as I mentioned before, the Green Party believes strongly in participatory democracy, just like we are tonight.
Thank you. As well, on an issue about, well, not really democratic reform, I apologize. Here's the question. Where does your party stand on treating Ontario as a sanctuary province? And what do you think that might cost on Ontario taxpayers if we go that route? I start with Chandra.
Thanks. The sanctuary province is an important topic that's come up quite a bit. We've even seen our municipalities in Ontario, like the city of Toronto, become sanctuary cities. And it was such a good idea that even Doug Ford voted for it there. Our municipalities and our province don't control immigration, that's the federal government. But once people are here, we need to be able to provide services and look after them. It's an issue of both security and health for our communities as well as for individuals. When people don't feel safe coming forward for health care or to report violence to the police, that actually puts our communities at higher risk. When the police don't know that violent incidents are happening, when we don't know that employers are paying people under the table, that undercuts wages for other workers. When people don't feel safe getting vaccinations or health care, then that puts other people at risk. And that's one reason why even associations of chiefs of police in the United States support this idea, because it makes everybody safer. And it's also a question of values and what kind of province we want to live in.
All right, thanks very much. Nicolita.
If you're referring to Ontario being a sanctuary for immigration, is that?
Once people have come here possibly illegally, that they are able to access the services of this province.
Okay, well, I mean, we don't have anything on this issue, but but Ontario being, it is a sanctuary. This is a great province, and I think that everybody that is here should have access to what we have to offer.
Thanks very much, Jeremy.
This is not something that the PC party would support. We support responsible immigration. The federal government has a process in place, and immigrants who are new to our country can follow these processes to get benefits at the right times. This is not something that I think we need to focus on as a priority when we're seeing rising debt, increased cost of living, and services that are declining. Those are going to be our priorities, not becoming a sanctuary province.
All right, Pat?
The Green Party believes in social justice, and I think your Green MPPs will fight for a fair system so that people who come here legally or illegally can get at least the basic services that they need to survive while they're here.
And finally, Bob.
The concept of, quote, sanctuary city comes from down south and what's happening down there. From a practical point of view, the city of Ottawa is almost a sanctuary city already. The Ontario government, for example, the federal government is responsible for health care for refugees, and they were not covering the cost. And we stepped up to the plate and we started paying for it, even though it was a responsibility of the federal government. Marion Dewar, you may remember, one of the great mayors of Ottawa, started Project 4000 to bring 4,000 Vietnamese refugees here to Ottawa. We received them with open arms. The Syrian refugees who were coming in last year, and some of them are still coming in, we opened our arms to them. We are an open community, we're a welcoming community, we're an empathetic community, and defining it as a sanctuary city, I'm not sure how much farther it's going to take us, but I think that we could be very, very proud of what we are now, and I don't know legally what sanctuary city means for our city, but all I know is that when people come here and ask for help, need help, they get it.
Thanks very much. We're going to move on to a couple questions about healthcare. We're getting late, so I know it's an important issue for people. Let's start with a question. We're going to start with Nick. Many Ontarians struggle to find a family doctor. What would you and your party do to help improve access to family physicians in Ontario?
Kind of as I said before, by opening up the market, we create a lot more options. As it stands now, even myself, I found that it was a very hard time finding a physician for myself. A lot of our doctors are leaving the country just for better pay. Well, when we open up the market, we give them availabilities here. We get more doctors here, and we have more choices, and we'll be able to have access to better healthcare.
All right, thanks very much. Jeremy?
Mr. As I mentioned earlier, this is a matter of making sure that we're investing properly in our frontline healthcare services, and having a family physician is the first line of defense for many of these health issues. The doctors who I'm speaking to are all saying the same thing. They want a government who's going to negotiate a good contract with them. We're going to sit down and figure out what that looks like. And they also want a government that's going to make sure that our healthcare system isn't as top-heavy as it's been for the past number of years. That's going to make sure that our doctors choose to stay here in Ontario and establish roots rather than close up shop early or leave the province altogether.
All right, thank you. Pat?
I'm not too sure what the Green Party is going to do to allow for more doctors to be in Ontario, but I know that the Green Party believes in education on preventative healthcare and implementing services so that people are living the best and healthiest lifestyles that they can so that they don't get sick.
All right, thanks. Bob Shirley?
More than 1 million more Ontarians, 94% of all Ontarians now have access to a primary health care provider. Since 2003, the number of physicians has grown by over 6,000. Over 28,000 more nurses, including 11,000 more RNs, are working in Ontario today than when we came into office. We've created family health clinics that nurse practitioners are taking a lot of pressure off. The community health centers, we have 14 community health centers primarily funded by the province here in the city of Ottawa. They have family physicians, the number in there are growing. They have rosters of patients. They're in neighborhoods across the area, so we're making a lot of progress, but we'd like to get that 94% up to 100%.
All right, and Chandra?
One of the things we're seeing is that the demand for healthcare right now is a symptom of problems in other areas or demand for other forms of healthcare. So, as I mentioned, 1 in 6 people needs healthcare because they can't take their prescription drugs the way the doctor has recommended. People are seeing doctors for dental care because they can't get the dental care that they need. So problems just grow and grow until they end up going to a doctor for a tooth extraction. Mental health professionals aren't covered by OPIP, so if you have a mental health problem and you can't see a mental health specialist, you'll end up in your family doctor's office. When people live with low income or inadequate housing, their health suffers. They need to spend more time with their family doctor. So these are all areas that we're going to invest in. We're going to make sure that everybody gets the prescription drugs and dental care that they need in Ontario, regardless of where they work or how much money they make. We're going to invest in affordable housing. We're going to raise the rates for Ontario Works and Ontario Disability Support Programs so that people can actually afford healthy, nutritious food. And we're going to invest in community health centers and communities.
Thanks very much. All right, what is your position on supervised injection sites, and particularly as well a mobile supervised injection site for Ottawa? And more broadly, actually, we're going to put that in 2 parts. Let's start with what's your position on supervised injection sites. Start with Jeremy.
Sure, yeah. So my personal position is that I'm interested to see what the research says in terms of these safe injection sites. What I've read, and through consultation with folks like Vern White, our former police chief, is that safe injection sites done right, with the right therapy that can replace the drugs as part of the process, that is something that can actually help to reduce drugs. So that's something I'm going to be looking at. What does the research tell us? How can we tackle this challenge? Doug Ford, I will be the first to say, has suggested that he's not entirely sure that this is the right path for us, but he's open to hearing different points of view. And so that's, I think, going to be our plan is let's follow what the research says and tackle this important challenge.
Just to clarify, are you suggesting that you would be open to supervised injection sites where the healthcare professionals gave people the illicit drugs as opposed to bringing them themselves?
As far as I understand from the research, it's a replacement therapy that has been used quite effectively. So
What about the current system that exists in Ottawa right now? Are you in support of that?
I haven't read enough research on it to suggest whether or not it's right or not. I'm going to sit down and do that and make sure that I'm educated as a public servant before I make a decision.
Thanks very much. Pat Friel.
At the beginning of May, I was doing a community cleanup just at the corner of Woodruff and Baseline there, and some of my volunteers actually found some hypodermic needles. And so, you know, finding those in a place not only so close to retirement homes and the college, I think having these safe injection sites is absolutely imperative so that people can use these drugs and also get the counseling and the therapy that they need while they're doing these drugs.
Thank you. Bob Shirley.
Well, the Conservative candidate and his leader dither while people die. This is a matter of life and death for all age groups. We have put in place the most comprehensive opioid strategy in the country, investing over $250 million to address addiction and support people in getting the help they need. We're providing an immediate $222 million boost over 3 years to enhance Ontario's strategy to prevent opioid addiction and overdose. One of the most difficult things in society today is being the parent of a teenager. You never know sometimes whether they're going to come home dead or alive. You never know sometimes who they're with. And there are all kinds of families who have been impacted by young people dying. Good kids from good families. And that party is sitting saying, we want to do more research. They're dithering while people die.
Forgive me, Bob, for wanting to make sure that before the government allows people to take illegal drugs, that we've done the proper research to determine whether this is effective. I think that's the responsible thing to do, frankly.
Bob, did you want to respond to that?
You're in a minority, I'm afraid.
Okay. Chandra?
All the evidence shows that safe injection sites keep people alive and they keep communities safe, and the NDP supports the supervised safe injection sites. Obviously, we want to see people in treatment, but in order for them to get treatment, they need to be alive. The NDP will create a dedicated Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions so that we can address things like the opioid crisis and make sure that people get the addictions treatment that they need.
All right, thank you. And the last word goes to Nick.
Addiction is a medical problem and it should be treated in places to be able to deal with that. Now by the government setting aside places for these people to congregate in your neighborhoods, we don't think the government should be in that business. It should be up to proper care in the areas like hospitals that are designated to be able to take care of it.
All right. Okay, folks, that was great. I think we're going to start with our closing statements. We are going to go in the reverse order that we started. So this time we begin with Jeremy Roberts of the Progressive Conservative Party.
Sure. First of all, and I'd like to thank you for moderating a really spirited debate, and I'd like to thank my fellow competitors up here for really having a good, thoughtful engagement on the issues. I think what we've seen today is two very different visions for the future of Ontario. On the one hand, we've had a vision of a government that's going to continue to make life more expensive. They're continuing to spend more, they're going to continue to tax more, and they're going to make life more expensive for each one of us. On the other hand, you have another option, and that is a party, a PC party, that is putting forward a plan to make life more affordable. So when you go to the ballot box on June 7th, and I hope all of you do, because it's very important, I want you to ask yourself that question. Do I want life to continue getting more expensive, or do I want life to get more affordable? And I hope that you will make the decision to vote for Jeremy Roberts as your Ontario PC candidate. And my final thank you just goes to all of you for being engaged citizens. I remember sitting here when I was 14 years old, coming to my first political debate, and it's just wonderful that we continue to have such an active and engaged community here. So thank you to you.
Thank you. All right. Next we have Nick Kaliga of the Libertarian Party. 90 seconds, Nick.
I'd like to thank everyone. This is actually my, if you can't tell, this is my first time in front of the mic and in front of all of you. So thank you for bearing with me in my short responses and potential nervousness. But I'd like to close by saying that we'd like to explore the new possibilities of a wider market with more things available for you and more money in your pockets to be able to choose these services. So on behalf of the Libertarian Party, thank you all.
Thanks very much, Nick. Next we have Chandra Pasma of the New Democrats.
Thanks for moderating tonight, Joanne. Thank you again to the community associations for organizing this. Thank you to everyone for coming out. Congrats to Nick on your first debate. It must feel good. This election is about change. I hear that every single day from voters at the doors. They've already made up their minds that they don't want the Liberals, and now they're looking at the alternatives for change. The Conservatives have no plan. They don't even respect the voters enough to release a platform. People have been voting since Saturday, and they don't even know what they're voting on. Only the NDP has a comprehensive, costed platform that addresses the major challenges that address Ontarians right now. We have a plan to fix healthcare, a plan to create affordable childcare, to invest in schools to make sure that our schools aren't crumbling, to make sure that post-secondary education is affordable, to reduce your hydro bills, and to make sure that seniors are well cared for, a plan to protect our environment. And as part of Andrea Horwath's government, I will fight hard for you and your family and the things that matter to you each and every single day at Queen's Park. That is my promise. Thank you.
Now we have Bob Shkreli of the Liberal Party.
Thank you. Ontario's economy has been outperforming North American and European jurisdictions. Higher GDP, higher job creation, at 4.2%, the lowest unemployment in 30 years. In the last full year of stats, Ottawa has created 6,000 mainly full-time, high-paying jobs. Our tech sector is booming again. We established full-day kindergarten, saving families $6,500. And our recent budget provides free childcare for preschoolers, saving families $17,000. We're investing $2.1 billion in mental health care over 4 years, and $822 million to support our hospitals. And there are uncommitted voters who are trying to choose between the two progressive parties, the Liberals and the NDP. The NDP still opt for ideology, a policy of never legislating back to work, voting against legislated arbitration for colleges and universities at great cost to students and families, and would increase business property taxes by 28% and corporate tax by 13%, with negative impact on our economy. You have a choice for a committed, experienced MPP and a balanced, progressive government. I ask for your vote. Thank you.
And now finally, Green candidate Pat Creel.
Thanks. While my qualifications might not come up to par with those of my colleagues around me, I believe I make up for what I lack in experience with passion. Being 21 years old, I believe my learning curve is at its peak, and I want to be a part of the system and improve it as my own skills improve. I'm surrounded by great people right now, and I hope to represent this great community in the bureaucratic process by pitching not just my ideas, but our ideas. Green policies will always consider people, profit, and planet, and will never choose one over the other. That is the foundation of sustainable business, and I think the government needs to be a role model in sustainable business practices. I'm not here representing a party or a party leader shrouded in controversy or recklessness. I'm here representing the need for effective and efficient governance. I'm here representing a generation of up-and-comings. I'm here representing people-powered progress. I hope I can count on your support in this provincial election. Thank you.
It's not easy to run for politics. It's not easy to run for office, and democracy only works if people step up to the plate. So I thank all of you for running, and good luck, all of you. These debates don't happen by themselves. A lot of hard work went in to organizing this. Morley, to Jason, Bel-Air, a community association, the other community associations that were also involved. Thank you very, very much. We appreciate it. If your question didn't get asked, these fine people here would be happy to take your question for a few more minutes, okay? Thanks very much. Take care. Everyone vote on June 7th. Good night.